My guest this morning is author Stephen D'Angelo. Stephen is a business executive with 30 years of experience in the software technology industry, leading high-performing global organizations. Through his extensive business success, he has a keen awareness of the critical success principles everyone should follow to live a happy, healthy, and successful life. Stephen is a proponent of what he calls spiritual leadership, which is something everyone, regardless of their chosen field, can execute to achieve greater success and happiness. Stephen's book is A Single Day of Peace, an inspirational novel revealing 50 principles that can transform your life. That was just released on June 30th of this year. This inspirational novel was written to help people achieve a more happy and successful life while better connecting to their spirituality. To provide direction for anyone that is seeking self-improvement, growth, motivation, and more fulfillment from life. We all have parts of our lives that are flourishing and parts that need healing. Yes, indeed. Things we would like to change and improve. The proper mindset and actions we put into these life circumstances can make all the difference. The essence of the book is about the universal search we all undertake to find our true spirit, happiness, self-worth, and life success. The search for self-realization often requires courage to challenge the status quo, to find and be whom we are meant to be. The 50 success principles outlined provide direction for anyone that is seeking a more happy and successful life. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Stephen D'Angelo. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you for having me. Very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining me this early in the morning. Very much appreciated as well, because I know it's an early morning show. And thankfully, I believe you're here on the East Coast with me as well. So it's not too bad for it's 7 o'clock. But for some who call in from the West Coast, it's like 4 o'clock. And, for different parts of the country, depending on what time zone they're in, it could be even earlier, or if they're on the other side of the pond, as they say, it could be even later. So in any event, it's about 7 o'clock where both you and I are. So I thank you for joining me. So, all right, let us go back. We talked a little bit before we went on air. And as it turns out, Stephen and I are from the same city. We grew up in the same city. We went to opposing high schools, if you want to say opposing. I was at Eastside, he was at Kennedy. But in any event, actually, we went and we went opposing colleges, because I went here at William Patterson University. He was at Montclair State University. So he's a Red Hawk and I am a Pioneer.
That's right. That's right.
So let's see. Let me go back now. In high school, I would have been a Ghost. He would have been a Knight. And in college, he was a Red Hawk and I'm a Pioneer. So we're, and it's all good because we're all in the same area. And Stephen and I are about the same age category. So as I ask my questions, I'm quite sure the answers will be relatively familiar because we're coming through in the same time era. But I tell you what, speaking of that, let's kind of go back in terms of, all right, we were talking about this in terms of you being in business, but however, you wrote a book on spirituality or on peace. So let's kind of work our way into where did those paths kind of cross?
It's interesting. People ask me about the book, and they say, is A Single Day of Peace a spiritual book? Is A Single Day of Peace a business book? And of course I say yes. It's kind of both, and this is how it all came about. Through my years of working in the technology business and just being an advisor to companies, and I've made some investment in companies, I've worked alongside business executives, I've worked alongside professional athletes, I've worked alongside billionaires, I've worked alongside people that are successful in various endeavors, all walks of life. And I observe that the people that are successful and happy do things differently than people who are successful and unhappy. And people will ask me, what do you mean unhappy? If you've got financial success and you've got career success, you have to be happy. And I say, no, not quite. There are lots of people that candidly have what appears to be success, but they don't have the real success. They're not happy. So I saw the parts that things people did that made them happy, and they were more spiritual. They did more spiritual things. And when I would even talk to them, I'd say, you have a spiritual slant to you. And they would say to me, no, I really don't. I'm not religious. I'm not so sure what I believe. I'm not that spiritual. And I would point out a few things that they do. And I'd say, these are kind of spiritual things. And I think this is kind of the foundation of you as a being, as your spirit. And that's why you're a very happy person through your success. So I began to document these things, Mark. So through the years, I would document things that I have observed, and I've always had this idea that I would write a book, and that was the foundation of me writing this book, which is tied to spirituality, but it also is a guide. It is a manual, if you would, to achieve that happy and successful life. And I tie a spiritual theme to it. To the book, I talk about religion, which I can take your audience through if you'd like. So it is a blend. It's a blend of business, how to be successful, how to have a happy life, and it's a blend of spirituality.
Now, see, since we have common ground here, and I know the areas and the schools of which you're talking about, my first question would have been, when you were in Kennedy, were you at that point saying, one day I'm going to write a book?
No, I don't think so. When I was in Kennedy, candidly, I was thinking about how am I going to be successful myself. Growing up in Patterson, I'm very fortunate to grow up in Patterson, I always say. And, when I travel the world and I sit alongside some business executives and who went to Stanford, who went to Notre Dame, I'm happy to say Montclair University, and I'm happy to say I grew up in Patterson. But at that time, writing a book certainly was not on my mind. It was, how can I do well in school? How can I figure life out? How do I get myself into a position where I could be successful? But then as I got into the business career and I was an avid reader, I became an avid reader when I was at Montclair, and all kinds of self-help books and business books. And it was when I started with automatic data processing that career started to move in the right direction. And, I was reading a lot of books. I said, maybe someday I could write one. Maybe I could have an impact on humanity. I can help people be more successful. Maybe I could write a book someday. So it was a long time coming, and it wasn't until 6 years ago that actually I started. It took me about 6 years to write the book. That's kind of how this all came about.
No, and that's great because you've brought up some things that we're going to talk about, and I've been doing this show here. This is my 21st season, and
wow,
had someone told, and I say this all the time. Had someone told me 21 or 20 years ago that I'd still be doing it, I'd probably look at them like they had three heads. But at the same time, I am thrilled to still be doing it. I intend to do it for as long as they allow me to do it. As long as I'm not dismissed or fired or let go or whatever they want to call it, I will be doing it because it is something I love and get an opportunity to meet so many wonderful people, whether we meet face to face or not, such as yourself that I'm talking to you on the telephone and so many of my guests. But you just said something in terms of how long it took you to write the book. And there's also something you said, even before I get to that, you said you were an avid reader. This show was put together to generate or enhance or increase for the listening audience their desire to read more. Whenever the station manager approached me 20 years ago, he said, I'm putting together a show that I'm hoping will help people or encourage people to read. And that's what we've been doing for these years. And I've had authors over the years. Some say they took 10 years to write a book. Some say it took 6 years to write a book. Some say it took me a month. I mean, it has ranged. The range between of what people say and how long it took them to create their project, it varied. So to hear you say 6 years, that struck me. And the fact that you said you were an avid reader, because I personally believe there is a connection between reading and writing. Most of my authors, not all of them, most of my authors were avid readers and then at some point became an author themselves. So when you say it took 6 years, what do you mean? Was that 6 years with research? Was that 6 years of making the observations or 6 years of writing it? Talk a little bit about what was in that 6 years.
Yeah, I would say, Mark, the 6 years was writing it. It's interesting. The journey that I went through of writing it is I began to think about writing this book, and I had these two ideas in my mind. One idea was this idea of how do I document the things that help people live a happy and successful life, help them find their own personal better place in this universe that they are in. And also, candidly, I had questions around spirituality. I was raised Catholic. I call myself a rebel Catholic. I'm still a practicing Catholic, but I'm a rebel Catholic. And I candidly was not real happy with what the church was doing and how the church was driving spirituality and helping people be successful, helping people find their better place. So I started to think about the Catholic Church, and I started to say, it reminds me of some companies that I work alongside. They're old and they're stodgy and they have old rules and they're not up with the times, and those companies are struggling because they are not keeping up with the times. They're not thinking with innovation. And I kind of had this parallel in my mind, the Catholic Church is kind of that way. All these old rules, and they're losing their following, they're losing their customers, so to speak, right? And I had this idea in my mind that, I could write a story about how the Catholic Church should transform itself to be more uplifting, to be more spiritual, to help people be more successful, and just like a business can. And I had some strong opinions about it. And I thought about it candidly for like 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years, I said, I should start this book, but I was hesitant and I procrastinated because it probably would be a bit controversial, because the book would have to challenge the way the Catholic Church operates. So I, maybe out of fear, I was like, I don't know if I should start documenting my thoughts on this because, it may be too controversial. And then as the story goes, one day I was jogging along the boardwalk. I lived down in Seagirt, New Jersey, and I was jogging along the boardwalk in Spring Lake, and there was a interview with Bruce Springsteen, and they were asking Bruce about writing songs, and Bruce said, I write songs because I have something to say, and that's kind of why people write, have something to say. So that's why I write songs. So as I'm listening to this, I have something to say. It's been on my mind for a long time. And then actually a little bit later that day, I was listening. I said I'm an avid reader. I also like to listen to books on tape. And I was listening to a program by Dr. Wayne Dyer. He's a author and world famous public speaker.
I've read so many of his books. Keep going.
Yep. And now he passed away a few years ago.
Correct.
But I love his work. And he said in this program I was listening to, don't die with your story still inside you.
That's right.
Right? And I was like, okay, I got these two messages, today. Maybe I should have the courage to start writing. And then I did. I said, okay, I have this idea of a story, and I have this idea. I've got all of these principles that I've been documenting. Let me get started. So that was the beginning of the 6-year journey. And the reason it took 6 years was, I'm a father of 2. I work in Silicon Valley, so I commute to the West Coast often. I go to Europe for business. So, just busy with life, right? And so I would spend some long flights writing. I'd spend some late nights in hotels writing. I'd spend some weekends writing. But there were weeks at a time or even months at a time that I was just too busy to get my thoughts. So that's kind of why it took 6 years. It was a blend of creating the story and having the time to write. And actually, it was a blessing that I took that long, because I was able to think through this novel and this progressive story of a business person transforming and becoming a Catholic priest, which I can take you and your audience to how the story goes, but that's kind of the idea of the story. And it took 6 years, and then at the end of it being done, I thought I was going to have to self-publish it. But I said, let me send it out to a couple of publishers. What's the worst I could get? If you get no's, I got a lot of no's in my life. So if I get a bunch of no's, so be it, and I'll publish it myself. And I had 3 publishers that were interested, and I was shocked. So we did an agreement with one of the publishers, Caris Publishing, and we've been off to the races since June, and I'm happy to say it was the #1 seller on Amazon and for new releases in the inspirational category. So I was very pleasantly surprised that it took off that quickly, and I'm real happy about it, obviously.
Yeah, actually, it was someone, I'm trying to think of her name now, from Caris that reached out to me. For some reason, I'm thinking Amy, Emily, something. It'll come to me. But you know who I'm speaking of.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of her name, and you would know it. But in any event, yeah, they reached out to me in terms of setting up the interview. And so you're absolutely right in terms of, and listening audience, in terms of, because we've talked about this over the years, the difference between self-publishing and going to a publisher. As a matter of fact, Stephen and I are of the same age bracket. We remember that self-publishing didn't exist.
That's right.
During the time when we were in high school and in college, there was no self-publishing. You had to go to a publishing house. And as he said, you had to be able to take a lot of no's. But with the advent of self-publishing, people are able to publish their own works. Now, the only issue with that, if there is an issue, if you're someone who's meticulous and you edit and you do what you're supposed to do and you put out a quality product, there's nothing wrong with self-publishing. However, self-publishing also gives the opportunity for a lot of grammatical errors and, to be quite frank, a lot of junk to come out there. So you have to be very careful in terms of when you self-publish that it's just as professional as if you went through a publishing house. And so Stephen was fortunate or blessed enough to go through a publishing house. Now, there's something else you said when we were talking earlier, the difference between being successful and happy and successful and not happy. Now, many people think, like I said, they're diametrically opposed, just as you say. Whenever you say, wait a minute, he's successful, but he's not happy. Like, no. Yeah, that's right. He's successful, but he's not happy. You're like, well, how can that be? Because if you would think if you're successful, you're happy. But you're absolutely right. That's not always the case.
Absolutely true. It's not always the case at all. And when you say, what are they like that they're not happy? They have financial success, they have assets, they have a family, or they're a successful teacher, or they're a successful homemaker, but they're not happy. When you look at their behavior and you look at their disposition, you could see the negative energy, you could see the frustration, you communicate with their anger, and candidly, they're just not content. They're not happy in their place in the world. They're not happy in this place in the universe that they hold, and they're not seeing the greatness that they are, and they're not seeing the greatness that they have, and they can shift and adjust. And that's part of the mission of my book, to point these things out so the people that read it, they could evaluate various parts of their lives, and they could say, okay, I'm good here, I'm good here, I'm good here. Oh, this one, this what Stephen is writing in this book is kind of me. I got to improve on this one, and that's the intent. Let's look at ourselves in the mirror. Let's take good self-evaluation, and let's constantly adjust and constantly find ways to improve.
So what you were just saying about that, you're successful, at least to the naked eye. But what's going on inside of you internally can be the exact opposite of what we're seeing. How much of that can be attributed to, in some instances, either some type of mental illness or depression or some type of disorder or just going on within the person that they didn't ask for themselves, but it's on them that really, in some respects, don't allow them to be happy even when they're successful?
Yes, I think it's a great point, and that is a fair, valid condition, if you will. So if someone suffers from depression, let's use that example. If someone suffers from depression, there is, and this is a novice explanation, of course, because I'm not
correct, same here.
Qualified, but there's a chemical imbalance of some sort that's going on in the brain that is causing them to see things a little darker than the rest of us see them, and that certainly is a challenge. And by no means do I say, well, read my book and execute my book, and you'll overcome that depression. I'm not saying that at all. Obviously, there are certain conditions that need various kinds of medication. I think we all should be much more sensitive to this whole disease, if you will, of depression and the various aspects of it. But I certainly do believe that the conscious process of thought and meditation and the things that I talk about in the book about connecting with your spirituality will certainly help even with people that have various degrees of depression. I think what it does is let's use meditation, for example. One of the things I talk about a lot in the book is about finding that inner spirit. And when I do workshops with executives, when I'm called in to do consulting for executives and their leadership teams, I always find a way to get them to talk about silence. And I ask them, do you ever spend time being silent? in your day. And what are you talking about? Well, do you go somewhere in the course of your day for 10, 20 minutes and just close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and be silent so that you can listen to your inner voice? And they kind of start looking at me like I'm crazy when I start to talk about it. But then they start coming around because I shared them that at the end of the day, all the decisions you have to make in your life, all of the things that are going on in your life, you are being exposed to, and I use the word infected, by 60 to 80,000 messages a day, whether it be from your smartphone and social media and email and the news media, all kinds of advertising. You're getting outside in communication. The best communication is to get in touch with that inner spirit, go somewhere silent, close your eyes, take some deep breaths, relax, and you start hearing your voice more clearly. It doesn't happen the first time, but by the third, fourth, fifth time you do this, all of a sudden you start hearing things in your mind, and it's your inner voice speaking to you. So my point here is back to the depression scenario is people that do that, if they have depression, if they do more meditation, they will calm themselves a bit. And when they start finding a time where they're anxious and they're feeling blue or they're feeling gray, they can go back and do the meditation kinds of things to help get them out of it. So again, I want to repeat, I certainly don't want to claim that this is the cure to depression, that I don't understand that they're in a different place because they have a chemical imbalance of some sort. That's the best way I can describe it. I'm very, very sensitive to it. I do believe these kinds of ideas could be very, very helpful.
Absolutely. And it's interesting as I was hearing you talk just now, because when I'm not, and I think I say this line every week too, when I'm not here behind this microphone in the radio booth, I'm an educator. And a lot of what we do now deals with mindfulness and social emotional learning. They call it SEL and mindfulness. And when you just said you're working with executives and you're telling them, how much time do you spend getting quiet? How many times, it's particularly like in the business world, when you're talking these type of concepts, mindfulness, meditation, do they look at you like, that's just a bunch of hooey?
I would tell you that in the beginning when I would do it, so I've been doing advisory work for like 15 years now. What happens, just a little bit of background, I work closely with venture capital companies. So, the venture capital community, they invest in early stage companies. And when they do that, they like people from their network, and I'm one of many people in their network that they look to put into the company to guide the leadership team. So years ago, when I would go in and start to help them with their go-to-market strategy, their sales strategy, how they're positioning their products, how are they doing in their category, and helping them work through all of that and creating culture, I would certainly get into this, and I would get a little bit of a cross-eyed look from the leadership team. No, we're pragmatic, driven, competitive people.
Right.
We're going to attack the world and win over the world. What are you talking about being mindfulness? What are you talking about, like going to be silent somewhere, right? No, we have to go kick butt, right?
That's right.
Right? And they were able to come around and understand, the theory here. And I've seen so many of them do it successfully. But I would say more today, it's much more accepted more quickly because meditation has become much more common, which is fantastic. Yoga has become something that lots of people are doing. So I do believe we've been making great progress in the mindfulness side of life, and people are accepting it more, and especially in Silicon Valley, where, in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of, I'll say, younger people that are running companies. You'd be amazed. People in their 20s and 30s are starting companies and getting funded by the likes of Sequoia and NEA and Kleiner Perkins and the big venture capital firms, and that younger generation is more acceptable to these ideas. But even they need to be further encouraged because, candidly, very, very intellectual. They have a high level of intellect, some of these people, and they think that their intellect will carry them through it all the time. How they communicate with people, how they build product, how they go to market, their intellect will do it. And I have them understand that there's an inner voice inside of you. There is a universe of energy that is out there and in you, and you connect with it better through this silence and meditation, and that helps you be more successful. I will tell you this, and I've told this to so many people that has worked for me or people I've done consulting with. Nothing has had more of a positive impact on my life than meditation. The idea of getting peaceful, getting calm, and visualization of things that you want in your life. I visualized my life today is what I visualized years and years ago. And I believe that life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I talk about this in my book, A Single Day of Peace, a lot. And this idea of meditation and mindfulness and quietness, it allows you to hear that inner voice. And that voice is what tells you you're on track or you're off track. And if it's telling you you're off track, like you're not happy, or maybe I want to change careers. I had one executive tell me through his mindfulness sessions, his inner voice kept telling him that he needed to change his career. He became a sports coach. He left the business world, became a high school sports coach, and he said, I'm happier than ever. And it was through that inner voice, listening to it, I knew that's why I was always anxious, and while I was successful, I wasn't really happy. I needed to change. So there's a lot there that I just said, but mindfulness is being more and more accepted.
No, I'm glad you said it, because in radio, that's what we want. We want somebody that can talk. You do not want somebody to give you one word answers in radio. So yeah. I have no problem with answers like that, as we make our way through the hour. But in terms of now, you've thrown out some terms, and matter of fact, before I even asked this, I saw something the other day that said something along the lines of there were schools that were, instead of suspending kids, they were having them do meditation. And they were saying the results have been phenomenal in terms of, rather than suspend them and send them out of school, they're teaching them how to meditate. So they actually have the opportunity to meditate as a part of their consequences. And I don't even
wow.
And they're saying that the results are phenomenal. I love it too. And the only thing I hope they're clear on, not making the child feel like meditation is a punishment, because you don't want them to associate, okay, the only time I meditate is if I'm being punished. So as long as they can distinguish between that this is not a punishment, because I tell the same thing to the teachers all the time, please do not assign reading or doing math problems as punishment, because we do not want the students to associate something that they ought to love with being punished, because once you associate punishment with it, you're not going to want to do it. So I'm hoping those particular schools that are doing that are not making it appear as a part of your punishment, you're going to go meditate. Because at the end of the day, you want the child or the grown up or whoever it is to love to meditate. But I just wanted to share that as an aside. But my question is, because you've thrown out the concepts of meditation and visualization and mindfulness, and some in the listening audience may not know what those concepts are. Can you talk a little bit about, when you say meditation, what do you mean?
Yes. Cover a lot of this in my book about meditation. It's one of the key principles in A Single Day of Peace, my book. So let's talk about what meditation is. If you simply go Google forms of meditation, you will see there's all kinds of meditation kinds of methods, I'll call it, or techniques. I think one of the most popular ones these days is transcendental meditation. But regardless of which method you use, I happen to be certified in and have been using something called the Silva Method, Silva, the Silva Method. It's absolutely fantastic. I was certified in it, I think maybe 20 years ago now, maybe even more, and I've been doing it for a long, long time. Basically, all meditation, what it does is it gets you into a calm inner state. The vibrations of your brain and the vibrations that are going on in your body, and all of us have vibrations while we're alive. There's always vibrations. We're at certain kinds of level of vibrations. There's theta level, beta level, and what you want to get to is what's called an alpha level. And the alpha level, think of radio frequency waves going from up and down with sharp points to more smooth, calm waves. If you think about a calm ocean that is just having some ripples throughout it, that's what your vibrations become when you get to this alpha level. So the meditation process of deep breathing, of counting down, of visualizing all parts of your body relaxing, of visualizing yourself in a beautiful, peaceful place for you. Some people, that's in a park. Some people, it's in a beach. Some people, it's in a forest. Whatever is calming for you. When you visualize yourself and you go through this exercise of deep breathing, counting down numbers, visualizing your body relax, your muscles relax, visualizing yourself on a beach, you naturally now bring yourself down to what's called the alpha level. Your brain waves and body waves are slower. That when you are at that point, you are at the most impactful point to communicate to your own subjective mind and your being, so your inner spirit. And that is when you start programming, if you will, much like software program. You start programming yourself of the things that you want in life, the way you want to change. Maybe I'm too talkative and I want to be less talkative, or I'm not talkative enough and I want to be more of a better communicator, or I want to be a better athlete, or I want to be a better teacher, or maybe I want to be better at math, I want to be a better business person, better salesperson, whatever it is. That's when you start visualizing yourself as though you've already accomplished that. You see yourself in that place you want to live. You see yourself at the weight you want to be at. You see yourself eating the healthy foods that you want to start eating. And you're programming yourself. And when you come out of that state, and there's an approach to come out of it, to count yourself out of that meditative state, you go back to your normal level. You're now programmed inside of you to do those things. And the more you do it, the more you gravitate toward you from the universe, those things that you want. Because as I talk about in the book, the universe is an energy that we attract. It could be negative things we attract based on how we think and how we talk, or it could be positive things that we attract. And by going through meditation, you're attracting the things that you want in your life. You're attracting the things that you want to have better in your life. And it makes all the difference in the world. It makes all the difference in the world.
No, it actually does. As a matter of fact, and I guess it's probably where I haven't read the book yet. I will, because I always read the books after the interview, and I skim it prior to the interview, but I always wind up reading them from cover to cover after the interview. But I'm sure somewhere, like what you were talking about in terms of, negative thinking and attracting and positive, so somewhere in there, I would think you have something about law of attraction. I could be wrong, or
you are absolutely correct.
Okay,
absolutely correct. I do.
LOA, that's what we call it, law of attraction. Now, this is the thing, and we'll go down this road. It could be the rabbit hole, but earlier on, you were talking about the difference between religion and spirituality.
Yes.
And I'm quite sure, in some people's mind, not in mine, that a lot of people, think there's a contrast between law of attraction and what's going on in terms of God and universe. And to me, it's just another law, just like law of gravity, just like, and many of the things, if you look biblically, it has in there, so as a man thinketh, so is he. There's many examples in there that gets into this whole thing of the mind, or asking and receiving and not asking and not receiving. All of those things are biblically in there. So to me, I don't see them when we start talking law of attraction, the universe in and of itself. Yes, the universe was created by God. Okay, so I don't see where they're diametrically opposed. But you'll have some people, and I guess this was kind of like your fear in the beginning of publishing a book along this line about the Catholic Church, what have you. That's what probably drove some of those hesitancies. But I don't see it because, when you say meditation, I don't see meditation as opposed to prayer. I don't see law of attraction as opposed to anything else in terms of what the Bible is saying. Where do you whenever you're saying it's not religious but it's spiritual, where are you making the break?
Very, very good question there, Mark. So I do believe there's not so much a break. I believe it's more in the how. Let me explain what I mean. So first off, what you said, I agree with you. The concept of meditation or prayer, some people maybe are uncomfortable when you say, why don't you go pray? That may be uncomfortable for them because they don't see themselves as religious. They don't know if they believe in God. They don't see that side of it. But you tell them meditate. They'll, okay, I could go do that. Right, but I'm like, well, guess what? You're kind of praying too.
Correct.
And that's part of when I talk to people and I say, you're pretty spiritual. I'm not spiritual at all. Well, you're a meditator, aren't you? Yeah. Well, why do you meditate? Well, because I want to get in touch with my inner self. Okay, well, why do you want to do that? Well, because I know that I'll attract good things to me. I said, well, don't you think that's spirituality? Didn't Jesus teach that in the Bible, right? And they kind of look at me like, yeah, I guess you got a point. So back to your question about religion and spirituality. For me, this is Steve D'Angelo's kind of approach to it.
Right.
And this is why I wrote the book, A Single Day of Peace, and my character, Marc Tossi, Father Marc, he becomes a priest, and he teaches these things. Religion, to me, is if I go to Catholic Church and I sit through church and we go through the hour of all the readings and then all of the rituals of it, and then, of course, there's all these rules to go to heaven, so to speak, make sure you don't do these things and make sure you do those things, and you better be Catholic or you won't go to heaven, right? Now, if I'm Jewish and I go to temple, they've got their whole program, right? If I'm a Protestant, a Buddhist, right? We all have our religions and our rules.
Right.
What I'm saying is, why don't we all sit in a circle together and just talk about the spirit? Let's talk about spirituality, which is uplifting, that it is the law of attraction. It is doing for others. It is having gratitude. It is let's help somebody less fortunate. Like, for example, in my book, and Father Marc Tossi is giving a sermon, and what he's basically saying in his Easter sermon, it's the beginning of the book, he's saying to the congregation, we aren't getting it right as religious leaders. We've got too many rules here. You know what? Next week, don't even come to church. You know what you should do instead? Go find somebody that needs help and help them. That's better than coming here to church. Excuse me. Excuse me. So the idea there to your question is, I think spirituality is more of, hey, let's be thankful and let's be giving and let's attract to our lives the things we want. Yes, let's work hard. Let's do good for our country. Let's do good for our world. To me, it's more of that. And I think the leaders of religion, all religions, I use the Catholic Church in the book because that's what I know, right? It wasn't meant to just take a shot at the Catholic Church, but I've said as I say in my book, it applies to all religions, because I think many people of religions feel this way, and I've had many that have read the book communicate to me that are not Catholic, that have said, I'm Buddhist and we have the same problem, or I'm Jewish and we have the same problem. So it's more of, let's get out of the rules and let's get to togetherness. Like, how do we make this world a better place by helping people find their better place? That's the idea to me of spirituality.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I have read the Torah, I have read the Quran, I have read the Bible, I have read all of those, and the principles in each of them are very similar, if not the same. And you just touched on some of them. So in terms of, I agree with you. And a lot of times, though, I think where a lot of people get miffed or messed up is a lot of times people will, and I don't even know if they realize, and maybe some of them are, they'll try to, like you said, they'll try to take a shot at religion by saying, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Not realizing, okay, we get what you're saying in terms of, I want to move beyond the rules, but that's not an excuse for you not to understand, okay, there are different religions out there. It's almost like they're taking a shot at religion, which religion in and of itself is nothing bad about it. But in terms of what you're saying and what I just said, in terms of what I've noticed after reading the various religious doctrines, that the principles in and of themselves are the same. The golden rule pretty much is in all of them. Treat others as way you want to be treated. That's pretty much goes through all of them. And other principles that you just talked about. And that's why, that's Angelo. I'm really ready to read the book now. And you said if the priest starts off, he starts off saying, don't come to church next Sunday. Right off the bat, that would be different. Now, see, that's, if I was a pastor or a priest or whatever church, I might do something like that.
Yeah. There's another piece in there that in that Easter sermon that is something that's been on my mind that I had to put it in my book. So let me give you listeners just a little bit more background on the book so this will make more sense. So the story is about an individual. His name is Marc Tossi. He's a great business executive. He's a great leader. He exercises what I call spiritual leadership. And this is something when I do consulting, I talk with leadership teams about spiritual leadership. I can cover that with you in a minute. But and he's a great, successful business person. He's in the technology business, and he's got a large company that he leads. And people love working for him, not because he's easy, but he has these principles that he lives by.
Right.
Before he went into the business world, he actually thought about being a Catholic priest, but he said, no, I want to be in the business world, and he went that direction. He comes to a crossroads in his life. He has a very negative event happen in his life, and he has to do some soul searching. He does that, and he decides, I'm going to take leadership skills, and I'm going to go and become a Catholic priest, which is something I thought about because I'm a spiritual person. I love religion. I love Catholicism. And he said, I'm going to help transform the Catholic Church because it needs transforming. So he takes his skills, he becomes a priest, but he realizes, like I said earlier in our conversation this morning, Mark, that the Catholic Church is a bit like an old stodgy company, not going on new directions, not thinking more youthful, not being more innovative enough. So he tries to transform the church in his spirituality approach. He attracts millions of followers. People gravitate to him for all the things that we're talking about this morning that he talks about. But the church rejects him a bit because he then makes a pretty controversial prediction as to what could happen to Jesus Christ if he comes back to earth again. And the church rejects him, so he comes to another crossroads, and he goes on a sabbatical and travels the Camino de Santiago, which is a spiritual walk in Spain. And he documents 50 success principles that if you follow these principles, you'll live a happy and successful life. And hence, those are the principles that are in my book. So the book is a novel. It's a fictitious story to make it to be, entertaining, to be somewhat controversial, to be somewhat compelling, and then teach all of these principles to that story. So that's the foundation of the book. Now, back to the point that I was going to make, where I said, don't come to church. You would like that guy. The other thing he says is, why is it when we are about to give the body of Christ in the Mass that, you have to be Catholic to get it, right? If you happen to be here and you're a Buddhist today, you can't come and get this. Oh, and by the way, if you were divorced and got remarried and you've been happy for 30 years with your family, you're still not allowed to come and get this because you were married before, right? And well, it's really the body of Christ. Wouldn't you want everybody to have it?
Correct.
Right? Why would you ever stop that? So in that sermon, he says, you know what? Today, it's Easter. Anybody that wants Christ in them, you come on up and you can have the host because we want that spirit to be inside you. And that's something that always ate at me, that really, we have these rules and, this body of Christ is so special, but you can't get it.
Right.
Join our club.
Right.
You got to be part of our club to get it.
Excellent
Those
point.
are the kinds of the religion kinds of things that I challenged.
Excellent point. I can't wait to read it. I really can't. Like I said, I usually get to read the books after the interview because I'm always in the process of scheduling folks to be interviewed, so I don't get a chance to read all of their books prior to. But over time, I do get a chance to read them. I think I downloaded it already, but I'm not sure. If not, because I see it's in Kindle version, that's where all my books are now. I will have it downloaded.
It's also on Audible. It just came out on Audible as well. So if you rather listen to books, like I listen to most of my books these days, but so you could read it. You could read it on regular paperback. You could read it on Kindle, or you could listen to it on Audible.
Well, if I haven't downloaded it already, I think I have, but I'm not sure because I know we were scheduled before, and usually I do. If I didn't do it, I certainly will before today's end. I will have it in my iPad and my Kindle, and I will download it because the story sounds intriguing. And it sounds.
And I'd love your feedback. I'd love you to.
I will, because usually when I read the books, matter of fact, you're on Goodreads as well. Usually I put the review at the end whenever I read it. It goes on Amazon and Goodreads. But it sounds intriguing and relevant because you're right. And the Catholic Church is not the only one guilty of what you're saying in terms of all these rules and being stodgy and so on. They're not the only ones. And a lot of time, because if you look at the research, if you look at the numbers, like you were talking about the younger generation, church attendance or belief in having to go to a church building is down drastically.
Exactly.
The numbers are down. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing because there is a place for being with other believers. There is a place for that. That collective energy. There is a place for it. However, a lot of the rules and the this, that, and the other are turning people away. And like you were just saying, now to me, that doesn't make sense that you're going to tell me because I was married before that I can't have communion. We call it communion. You call it the body of Christ, what have you. That doesn't make sense to me. Because if anything, you would think you would want the ones that so-called broke the rules, if you will. If you look biblically, that's who Jesus hung out with. Jesus hung out with the rule breakers.
That's right.
He hung out. That was the main thing that they supposedly hemmed him up on. Like, well, you always hanging with this, that, and the other, this sinner, this, that, and the other.
That's exactly right.
But you would think like rather than because again, if you're trying to win me over and you're rejecting me, then how you gonna win me over? That's the part that doesn't make a lot of sense. So the story sounds intriguing, and the fact that you said how did you come up with the title? A single day of peace.
Yes. So I came up with that because a successful life, and again, I want to be very clear, when I say success, it doesn't necessarily mean things. It doesn't mean money. Now, yes, to some, that's success, and that's a part of success. But a successful life to me, is you're pursuing a worthwhile objective to you. So you want to be the greatest teacher in the world? Fantastic. You want to be the greatest bricklayer in the world? Fantastic. Like whatever success is to you. But you get there one day at a time. And if you get yourself into a place where you're doing things well, one day at a time, like running a marathon, it's one step at a time. When you do it that way, you build a lifelong of success. So a single day of peace was, if we can find ourselves to find the single day of happiness, our single day of peace, one day at a time, all of a sudden you look back like you've been doing this radio show for 20 years. You've been doing it one day at a time. Now you look back and say, oh my God, I'm doing this for 20 years. If you give yourself a single day of peace, one day at a time, and follow these principles, that's what it takes to have that happy and successful life.
Now, that's interesting that you just said that. It's so, when people are talking or when I'm reading, so many things pop into my mind. Now, you just said one day at a time in terms of this radio show. I'm up here every Saturday, and what popped in my mind when you just said that was, wow, he's right. One Saturday at a time. 20 years, one Saturday at a time. That's what it's been. That's a different look. And that's what this whole thing is about, is different perspective. How much of it, because I would think with everything that we have going on in terms of, and I was saying this earlier, Afghanistan, COVID, Haiti, Ida, on and on down the list of things that just seems to be piled on top of others, things that is already existing. How important or is that whole thing of being able to get that single day of peace with everything we got going on?
Yes. So, Mark, this is an interesting point. I often say the mission of the book is to help the world become a better place by helping people find their better place. And here's my theory on this, my thesis, if you will. I'm making this a little better. If we as individuals can find our better place, which means I'm happier, I'm more content, I'm less frustrated, I just feel good about myself. If I'm feeling that way, what am I apt to do? I'm apt to help others.
Correct.
Right? But if I'm angry and bitter and jealous and not happy, how apt am I to go help others? Probably not so much. So if I can help people find their better place through my book, and they are happier and they're finding that single day of peace, they're going to be more apt to help others, and that creates unity, and that's what we need. You just described Afghanistan, racial division, political division. All of this division is not good, but maybe we could create more unity. But let's start one single day of peace at a time. Let's start with one person at a time, and let's break down these divisions. Let's get more unity. And I think it's critically important for us to, books like mine, to help people feel and think better, so that when all of this stuff is going on around us, we have a little bit of a shell around ourselves,
right?
A positive energy. Because I could sit here and I could think about Afghanistan, and I could be very angry. I could think about all of the division that's going on in our country because of politics,
right,
or because of the racial perspectives. I can look at all of this, and if I take the negative slant, man, we're messed up. The world is crazy. The world is going down the tubes. I don't trust anybody. Do I want to live that way, or do I want to live? You know what? There are some things that need improving, and I'm going to do my best to give and improve them. But I believe this world is a good world. My world is a good world, because I'm thinking the positive side, right? That to me, I strongly recommend that people take that positive slant. Otherwise, it's misery.
I could not agree with you more. There's this saying, hurt people, and yeah, they do. But at the same time, happy people can help people become happy.
Yes.
And so, yes, hurt people, but those, like you were just saying, with this positive, they can now help other people, hopefully, if they're not dealing with something beyond, like we were talking earlier about depression or chemical imbalance or whatever. Hopefully you can guide them to exactly what you just said. Because, I mean, I was saying earlier before we came on the air that I got to the point where I just had to shut CNN off the other day because I'd watched it a couple of days and they were going through the Ida thing and the destruction and all the houses that were destroyed. I just had to turn it off on Thursday, I believe it was. I can't watch this anymore. Because you're right. What'll happen is you'll take on all that negativity. Now, going back to the law of attraction, you'll take on all that negativity and you'll begin to attract negativity towards you and negative events to you.
Absolutely true. No question. So in the book, I cover this too. I call it the Neggy News, and Father Mark, when he's being interviewed by a late-night talk show host, because it becomes very popular, my character in the book becomes very popular because of his spirituality, he's invited to do a late-night talk show with one of the most popular ones, and he's asked by the talk show host, I won't share who it is, so your listeners could read the book and get it then, but he's asked about, what do you think as a spiritual person, all this political divide and stuff, and Father Mark says, well, I kind of believe the media has a lot to do with this, you guys in the media, right? Because you turn on CNN, you get one story, you turn on Fox, you got another story, and all the people, imagine people that go through their lives doing this. They wake up in the morning, turn on the news.
Right.
They get infected by the news. Before they go to bed, what do? They watch the news. And then all night as they're sleeping in their subconscious mind, that neggy news stuff is circling in their brain, and they do that morning and evening ritual for a lifetime. They're infecting themselves with negative things. And actually, I love your show because I have spoken to people over the years saying, why is there not a positive news station? Why can't I turn on a news station that tells me all the great things that happen in the world today, right? The great things people did today versus, who murdered who and all that other stuff that we're seeing.
No, absolutely. I could not agree with you. I'll tell you, I literally had to, because I'll go on spurts where I can watch the news daily, and then I have to shut it off for a few weeks, and I'll keep up with what's going on, like on Twitter or something like that, or what's going on in the world. But I'll just not watch the news for weeks at the time. And
that's a good practice. It's a good practice. Yeah. I mean, whatever side of the aisle. I mean, news has become so politically driven, right? I mean, whatever side of the aisle you're on. I find it somewhat comical. I will turn on CNN and then go to Fox, and it's amazing the different perspectives you're getting because they have their own political agenda.
Correct.
And back to our being positive, we're being infected by their agenda.
That's an interesting word.
How about we get silent and go decide what we want our own agenda to be?
Correct.
Right?
That's an interesting word when you say infected. Yes, contagious, infected. Stephen is absolutely right. Now, what you just said in terms of that ritual of getting up, watching the news, and going to bed watching the news, why not put the meditation or the prayer or whatever you want to call it in its place, in that place? Instead of getting up and watching news, get up and meditate.
Exactly right. And often that's the best time because you're coming out of a sleep and the vibrations of your body. You haven't gotten into the hecticness of the day, right? And that's actually many of the meditation programs do suggest first thing in the morning, go through a process of meditation.
Absolutely. And you can do the same thing in terms of, like you were just saying, the folks that watch the news before going to bed, meditate.
That's right.
Before you go to bed.
Read a good book or meditate. That's right.
And so, I mean, this, like I said, I can't wait to read it. I really can't. Because it sounds like, and the best way, historically, the best way to get a message across to anybody is to tell it in story. Now, you could sit there and you could put the principles and the definition and of the concept of meditation. You can put that in a book all you want. Somebody may or may not get it. But now if you put it in a storyline, it will leap out at them and they will remember it. So the fact that they're going to remember, is it Father Mark, you said, right?
That's right.
Love the name, by the way. Not that I'm biased.
I hate to tell you, Mark, it wasn't after you.
But in any event, the story of Father Mark, now folks will remember the whole thing about meditation, and all the other principles that you have in there. It's 50 of them. A Single Day of Peace, an inspirational novel revealing 50 principles that can transform your life. We've come down pretty much to the end. And at this point, Stephen, I give you the opportunity to promote. In other words, where the book is available, websites, if it's on Amazon, you can say everything with the exception of the price, with the exception of the dollar amount. You can promote, you can shout your publishing company out. You can shout, I'm trying to think of her name, because we were emailing each other until you and I started emailing directly. But in any event, you can shout out anybody you'd like to. And I heard you say you were down in Seagirt, correct?
Correct.
How did you make out in the storm? How did you make out with Ida?
We were very lucky because the storm actually went more west.
Okay.
So it wasn't along the coast, so it totally missed us.
Okay, good for you.
Yeah, we were lucky. I know that some people really, really struggled. It was a tough one, and a lot of people struggled. We were fortunate. It missed us, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, God bless and it missed you. So good for you, because a lot of people really lost a lot in that short period of time. But in any event, as I was saying, you have the opportunity to promote for the next few minutes. I'm going to turn off the microphone and you can shout out and share whatever information you like, with the exception of a dollar amount, because when folks get in contact with you, or if they decide to buy the book, they can figure that out. You all can work that out on your own. So we just don't say that on the air. But anything short of that, for the next couple of minutes, the mic is yours.
All right. Well, thank you. I greatly appreciate it. Well, first, thank you to you, Mark, for giving me the opportunity to have this hour with you and talk about the book and talk about these great life principles. Hopefully, people will come away from this hour that have been listening, and they'll start thinking about self-reflection. They'll think about, hey, I've got to find ways to be more positive. And I'm going to think about meditation. So hopefully we've positively impacted the people that have been listening. As it pertains to my book, A Single Day of Peace, it is an inspirational novel. And as Mark said, I share with you how to be successful and happy in any endeavor that you engage in. That's the intent of the book. But I tell it in a story so that it's entertaining, so that it's compelling, so that it attracts you to these principles, rather than, as Mark said, just create a manual, do this, do this, do this. This book allows you to read a fictitious story that's entertaining and candidly enjoyable to follow in order to embrace all of these principles. And you can purchase the book on Amazon, Amazon.com. You can purchase it on BarnesandNoble.com, Walmart.com, Target.com. Some of the actual Barnes & Noble stores are carrying it. You can go to my website, asingledayofpeace.com, and you can learn more about me. You can learn more about the book. You can actually even order it from my website. There's a link right in the front. It takes you right to the Amazon page to order it. So that's asingledayofpeace.com. And if you want to communicate with me, my email address is the same, asingledayofpeace@gmail.com. So asingledayofpeace@gmail.com comes directly to me. I read all of the emails. So if you want to communicate with me, that's the best way to do it. You'll find me on LinkedIn. But if you email me, I'll actually send you my LinkedIn address if you're interested in that. But again, you can purchase A Single Day of Peace on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Kmart, all of those websites. I appreciate everybody that reads it. Thank you. And if you do read it, please send me an email to asingledayofpeace@gmail.com and give me your feedback. And please, please, please put reviews out there on Amazon, because the more reviews, the more Amazon promotes it, and the more peace we can spread to others.
All right. Well, I can tell you, as I sit here on this chair and talk in this microphone, I will begin reading that book tonight.
Awesome.
I will be downloading it a little bit later this afternoon, and I would probably begin reading it this afternoon, because, again, I'm fascinated just based on the conversation. And I hope for those of you in the listening audience that the same thing that happens to me is the same thing that happens to you in terms of piquing your interest, like piquing your curiosity. It's like, you know what, after listening to that, I want to read that book. I want to hear what it's about. I want to read what it's about and see what it's about. That is what I hope the experience each week is for you. That you listen to the author, you hear it straight from, as they say, the horse's mouth. You get an opportunity to gain insights from the person who wrote the book, and that it would now pique your curiosity in terms of now purchasing the book. All right. So, there's so many avenues. You have independent book retailers. You can download it. You can go to various websites. You can have it delivered to your door. However you want to get it, you have an opportunity to get all of these books. So it is always my hope And particularly one like this, because Stephen said it best, as if we can change each individual, we can change the world.
That's right.
As Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see. If we have the opportunity to have folks be the change, and we have opportunity, there's no reason in 2021 for anybody to be ignorant, for anyone to be uninformed, for anyone to be or not able to gain knowledge, because it's there for us. Whatever it is, like he said, it's there for us. If we don't take it, if we don't take the opportunity, shame on us. So if you know you're struggling, like he said, I love that whole difference between, and it is amazing how, yes, it does happen, that you have somebody that from the naked eye, from those around them, man, I wish I was them. Man, I wish I had that. Not realizing that they're miserable on the inside.
Right.
They have the houses and the land and the cars and the this, that, and the other, and they're miserable on the inside. So somehow we got to sync that up. And that's what a book like this is doing. That it'll give you the opportunity to sync up the material success with your internal success. And if you get the two of those together, you really got something. If those two things are out of line, you got something. No matter how many houses you acquire, it won't matter.
You said it perfectly. Absolutely true.
So with that being said, Stephen, thank you so much for rising with me this early. Love the conversation. If you remember, listening audience, we actually had this interview scheduled a couple of weeks ago, and then a friend of yours passed away, Stephen, if I remember correctly.
That is correct. Yes. My apologies. Yes.
No need to apologize. Our condolences. And we, things happen in the time they're supposed to happen in, and it was supposed to happen this morning, and it happened in a wonderful manner. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
As have I. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it very much.
All right, we'll be in touch. I recorded it. It'll be on my YouTube channel. I'll send you the links, and you can do whatever you'd like to do with them once you receive them.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. I enjoyed the time with you.
All right. Have a wonderfully blessed day, and like I say, we'll be in touch.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Take care.